There it goes. Thank you. I was looking real quickly, Dawn, so I could read our club's motto. So I'm sorry, I'm just pulling that up here real quick.
It's also on the agenda. I just put it on.
Okay, that makes make it much easier. We are an advanced Toastmasters club, which supports maverick leaders to have more impact by providing advanced feedback on leadership skills and discovering what it means to be an out-of-the-box, innovative leader. Welcome, everyone, Toastmasters and guests. First, I would like to introduce our grammarian today, who is Martin Green. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry. As counter, I will be counting and paying attention to filler words like and so, and transitions like and. As grammarian, I will be keeping track of good grammar and trying to find examples where grammar could be improved. The word of the day, I will share that, is going to be, where are you? Hold on. Here it is. And there we are. The word of the day is reverent, which means deeply respectful, feeling, exhibiting, or characterized by reverence. An example would be, I feel reverence towards anyone who can tolerate 3 feet of snow multiple times each winter. And that is a word that you want to use as many times as you can during this, because we all have reverence towards each other, right? So good luck, and back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Marty. I am in reverence of you for providing that word for us today.
Yeah.
Moving right along, our timer is Rick Weiner. Rick, would you please explain your duties and what implements you'll be using to show our timing for today?
Absolutely. I will do my best to have reverence for the members as they watch the timing cards. My job today is to help keep the meeting on time and to time each speech. When you reach the minimum time of your speech, I will hold up the green card. When you're halfway between the minimum and maximum time, I'll hold up the yellow card. And when it's time for you to keep your mouth shut, I'll hold up the red card. And if you keep going, we'll make it a stop sign. And that's my role as timer.
Thank you so much. So we'll go ahead and move to our speaking section of our meeting. We're having a special treat today. We're having Dawn DeSera providing, and Pamelah Landers providing a presentation together. I'll be introducing Dawn. Dawn is a business and life coach who focuses on the energy of success. In Toastmasters, her energy is applied towards growing this club. Today, she will be interviewing Pam Landers, acting as a host of a video show. The interview is part of the Communicating on Video series. Both Pamelah and Dawn will be evaluated separately. Dawn will be evaluated on project number 3, when you are the host, and Pamelah on project 2, the talk show. And Dawn will be providing a question and answer series, question and answer session after the interview. Timer, please note, the initial speech is 5 to 7 minutes, followed by question and answer session, also 5 to 7 minutes. At this time, please welcome Dawn DeSera.
Tricia, before we start.
Yes.
Do we have the second evaluator? I see it's Mark Worthy, but I don't see it here.
No, you're correct. I did not catch that.
Volunteers?
I'm not familiar with the, Jim? All right, thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
That's which evaluator, which speaker?
You'll be evaluating Pamelah.
Oops, communicating on video.
Jim, do you know where to find the evaluations page on our Toastmasters site?
I don't think he knew you were talking with him.
Jim, do you know where to find the evaluations page on our Toastmasters site?
Right, I'll see if I can navigate to it.
All right, over to you, Dawn.
Thank you. So today I'm interviewing Pamelah Landers, expert master hand analyst who has been reading hands for 27 years. Producing 10 books and 75 audios, she is the #1 international best-selling author of hand analysis products in the world. She has read over 50,000 hands in her lifetime. Pamelah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So good to be here.
So Pamelah, can you tell our audience what is hand analysis and how is it different than palmistry?
Hand analysis is a science-based system of interpreting and decoding the hands. I'm looking at fingerprints, which identify life purpose and life lesson. The lines are behavior and characteristics, personality area, and the hand shape is an archetype of who you are. What's different about what I do than palmistry is no predictions and no fortune telling. I'm not going to tell you how many kids or children you're going to have.
That's great. So before I learned about hand analysis, I was in a lot of pain trying to figure out what my life purpose was and what I was called to do. I was coaching and helping others manifest great things in their lives, but I really felt broken, like there was something wrong with me because I just didn't know what my real purpose was. And when you shared that I'm designed for, and I put this in quotes because this is what I'm sure you said, creating an authentic family life and creating communities through my work, I felt this huge, huge sense of relief for me. And where I had been using my work as sort of an escape before, all of a sudden I had permission to really create the kind of family I didn't want to escape from. And I had permission to create communities that I wanted to be a part of, like advanced Toastmasters online. So how about you? What was revealed in your hands and how did that change things for you?
That's a great question. What was revealed to me was a lot of things about leadership and power. I'd always felt it, but it gave me permission to own that I actually am designed to be a leader and kind of lofted that area forward in my life. It also opened up a whole channel around creativity and artistry. I'd always been creative and doing crafts my whole life, but I hadn't owned that I was an artist. It was 12 years after I had my first class in hands that I finally was like, oh, I get to own I'm an artist. I had to grow into that. And the other part is learning that I actually am designed to be highly intuitive and owning my intuition. Before I learned how to read hands, I knew I was intuitive, but when I started understanding the design in my hands and realizing that all the markings in this part of my hand are all about intuition, it gave me huge permission to just start telling everybody I was actually psychic. That was a big shift for me. So it liberated me in many, many ways.
Awesome. So the thing that I love about hand analysis is that you just can't hide your giftedness. It's like all right there, right in the open palm of your hands, like nothing else. You just can't hide it from somebody like you anyways. So, as we heard in the introduction, you have this amazing body of work that includes 10 books and you have over 75 audios. You have this unique point of view around hand analysis. And you're the world's most prolific and respected hand analyst in the world. And I'm sure this didn't happen overnight. So what do you say to the person who's listening, who may have a lifetime of expertise and experience and has their own out-of-the-box view of things and who may be struggling to get their body of work out there, how would you advise them to get their work and wisdom out in the world?
The first thing I'm going to say in response to that is you can't do it alone. You're going to need help. I had a lot of help along the way with editing, with technology things that needed to be done, learning how to get my books physically printed or in technology format that they can be downloaded with the audios. I had to learn a lot of technology, and I had a lot of help in that process. The other thing I'm going to say is trust that you actually deserve to get your body of work out into the world, and that it's an honor. People are waiting for what you have to share. So give yourself permission to ask for help and not have to do it alone, but also to trust that your body of work matters, and do it in pieces. You don't have to do it all at once. It's overwhelming if you try to do it all at one time. You'll never get it done. I do one marking at a time. That's how I get my work out into the world.
Wow. So before we open up questions from the audience, maybe someone has questions that might relate to them personally about getting their work out, or how they might connect with you differently, or about hand analysis. I mean, how do people connect with you offline if they want to learn more about you and hand analysis and your body of work?
I actually have a website. I know it's necessary these days because that's where people go first. And it's under my name, PamelaLanders.com. So it's easy to find me. If you remember, I have an H in my name at the end of my first name. And that's the easiest way to find me. It's where I have lots of actually descriptive content as well as my products that are currently available.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And at this time, I'm going to open up the floor for questions. If anyone has a question, I guess just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask Pamelah questions about her work or anything that might have come up while you were listening. Do I see any hands? Tricia.
So I'm just curious, Pamelah, if this happens to you a lot. Let's say I'm a computer person. I know people would come up to me and ask me to look at their computer all the time. Does that happen to you? Do people just walk up to you and ask you to look at their hands?
Well, once they find out what I do, there are two reactions. One is people will hold their hand out to me, or the other one is they put their hands behind their back because they don't want me to look, because they're thinking palmistry, fortune telling, future predictions before they've investigated what it is I really do. Yes, people do that. And I have a good marketing response to that. I'll actually tell them one thing, and I tell them I'm going to do that. I'll tell you one thing for free, what's in your hands, because people don't know what scientific hand analysis is. So when I demonstrate it, it makes it real for them. It's been a very good marketing strategy, actually, to do that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. 2 questions. One is, what's the craziest thing anybody has asked you to predict for them, not realizing that you don't do that? And the second is, how did you find that you had this talent?
Okay. First question is, I discourage predictions. When people ask me that question, I tune it out because I can't respond to it. Probably, how long am I going to live is probably the most common question that I would get in that area. It's like, I don't know. That's up to you and God. I can't help you with that one. How I got involved in this is that I have always been interested in metaphysics. I'd been doing astrology for 20 years before, while I was still working in the corporate world doing astrology readings at lunch in my Hewlett-Packard days. And I met the man who taught the system. I just knew I had to learn how to read hands. I didn't totally know why. I wanted it to be a career, but I didn't know why. I found out after I'd been in it for quite a few years that I had a calling to it, which is to document the system in my language. So that's why I can't quit. I tried twice to stop doing hands. It didn't work. Got called back.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are Is there another question? I thought I heard Doug.
Yeah, Pamelah, I have to play the skeptic here since my background is in much harder science. It's physics. Could you explain how this hand analysis could be considered scientific?
Yes, actually, I looked up the word science, what science is. Science has, one of the things about science is exploring. It's not, everything is not concrete. It's not known at the beginning, right? Scientists are always researching and looking. There's a lot of that going on in the hands world. What makes it scientific is that there are two things. There are rules and structures. If a line is straight, that means it's analytical. If it's curvy, that means it's more emotional. If it's short, you don't spend much time in it. If it's long, you spend a lot of time in it. Those are two simple examples of rules and structures. Science has rules and structures. The other piece is that the fingerprints are formed 16 weeks after conception and they never change. That comes from medical library research. All of that has been medically proven, which also gives it a scientific foundation. Does that answer your, I get this question a lot. This is probably the question I get the most.
Sure.
How is it scientific? So did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. I have a quick other question. If someone's asking you something crazy, have you ever said talk to the hand?
No, I have not. Great question, though. Lori.
I'm wondering, when you do your hand analysis, if you also teach people how to read their own hand.
I do. I've been teaching hands since the 90s. I had my first class in 1996. I've been teaching people how to read hands for a really long time, and I'm ongoing. And I do it on Zoom. Most of my clients are around the world, so I teach classes online.
I found myself looking at my hand as you were talking, so that's what made me think of that.
Yes, a lot of people do that. Francisco. I think oh, there you go. Did you have a question, Francisco?
I'll
You're
unmute
muted
you,
still.
Francisco. Maybe that'll be easier. There. I think you're unmuted now. Oh, nope.
Okay.
There we go.
There.
Pamelah, in terms of publishing, what would you say to somebody who has not ever been published? You said it takes some help. What would you say the first step would be to, let's say you don't even have the manuscript on hand, but you have an idea. What would you say is crucial for them to get published?
The first thing I would
before
ask,
the manuscript.
right, the first thing I would ask is, do you prefer to talk or do you prefer to write? And if you prefer to talk, I'd record it and have it transcribed. Or if you like to write, I'd write it out. But I think that's the first step, is deciding how you want to get these words onto paper, because not everybody is a writer. I am. I love to write. That's not an issue for me, but some people like to talk. So that'd be my first suggestion. And then ask for help with the transcribing. Don't do it yourself if you do it that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And do we have any more questions? We're going to wrap up. I think that's it. I just want to make sure that I didn't.
I have one more thing I want to add in response to Francisco's question.
Okay.
Is that if you're writing a nonfiction book, my recommendation is to not think you have to write it from beginning to end, but start with where you're ready to communicate something. I have folders on my computer for chapters, each chapter that I'm putting into a book. I don't put them all together in one place, and that's how I organize my preparation for writing. And it's super helpful, because then I can go just add quotes or pictures or notes or whatever I want on that chapter.
Wonderful. Well,
It's catching. Thank you.
You're welcome.
thank you very much. And at this time, we're going to turn the meeting back over to our Toastmaster, Tricia G. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pamelah.
I'm in reverence of you ladies during this interview process. Thank you. We will move on to our next area of our meeting today, which is impromptu speaking, which will be led by Andrea Sanger. Please welcome Andrea, our topics master for today.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone. I'm excited and I have great expectations for you. That is our theme for today, so I'm going to ask you some questions about expectations. Is there anyone who would like to go first today? No one? Okay, Francisco, I'm going to have you go first. And my question for you is, what expectations do you have for the skills you are learning in Toastmasters?
Would you mind repeating the question? Sorry.
Sure. What expectations do you have to use the skills that you have been learning in Toastmasters? How are you going to use them?
Great question, Andrea. Coincidentally, this is the 10th year I've been doing Toastmasters. The club that Dawn mentioned earlier, that's actually the 11th club that I belong to. And not only some of you in Chicago in the fall, but some of you hopefully I'll be shaking hands with at the spring conference. But that's all here. That's all internal. That's all, perhaps, as some people call it, in the echo chamber. Also happening this year, and hopefully I will put all of this effort to good use. I'm actually going to be presenting at a trade conference in Vegas in April, and I'm like past happy. I'm beyond ecstatic. I'm reviewing the last decade of work because Toastmasters, I mean, some people ask, it's not the first thing that I've ever done, that people wonder why are you doing it? And sometimes you don't really have this clear idea, but now I see it. And to wrap things up, coincidentally, out of Vegas, I met with Darren LaCroix, I don't know how to pronounce that one, in Louisville recently. And between him and everything that's been happening, most definitely, I got a great deal for the hour of speaking that I'm going to do. So I think of it as a paid engagement, not directly paid, it's more bartering. But what I've been feeling lately, it could be a nice way to expand my profession. And I'm finally seeing it this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. Doug, I'm going to ask you the next question. In what ways have you exceeded the expectations of your teenage self?
Thank you, Andrea, for a very interesting question. My expectations, my teenage self definitely was still interested in science. I've always had a leaning in that direction. But I don't think as a teenager that I'd visualize myself getting a PhD in physics. It was a course, or was it an area I wanted to pursue, but I didn't know that I would take it that far. Certainly, I also didn't realize that I would leave that all behind, partly because of Toastmasters, in that my career path has gone in a completely different direction that I never thought about as a teenager. And now I'm helping people learn the principles that can get them out of debt and get them financially free. And that is definitely an area that I had no thought of when I was a teenager, but it's certainly been a very satisfying journey for me. And Toastmasters, through the communication and leadership process, has really provided the foundation that has put me on this path. So I'm quite happy where I am, even if I had no idea about it at the time. As a teenager. Back to you.
Thank you. Yay, good job. Jim, What are your expectations for yourself in the coming year?
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. What are my expectations for myself this coming year? I've just moved from one town to another, so I think my initial goal is to get settled into what might be my last permanent home now that I have a son that has moved away. And I have explained this in a couple of, or I've hinted at it in a couple of my speeches previously. I have become somewhat of a political animal, if you will, in addition to being a student of leadership. And I'm trying to merge those two, not in the form of being someone that might run for an office per se, but raising awareness on some of the values that I find important, like global warming, and steering as many people as I can away from what I call identity politics. And I think becoming more of an advocate on proper thinking when it comes to understanding ploys and the seductive approaches people use, propaganda and public relations and things like that. So I think for the next year is to step out of the Toastmaster realm and apply those skills in an educational foundation venue where I can share this information where it makes the most sense in a society, in my local government and local society in the town that I now live, which is Richmond, Kentucky. They don't know I'm coming, but I'm coming. Thank you very much, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you. Good job. Rick, I know that you're doing the timing, so can somebody time Rick? Is there anybody that can time Rick? Okay, Doug's going to time you. How do you manage not meeting your personal expectations? Or do you always meet them?
That's a very interesting question. How do I manage not meeting or meeting my personal expectations? Well, I think that there was a class that I took many years ago that teaches you to be clean. I mean, if you have an expectation to read a book and you haven't read it, it's sitting on your counter, just pick it up and skim through the pages and put it down. You have to complete it. So meeting expectations is sometimes difficult, and I usually try to choose expectations that are not reachable. For example, as Lieutenant Governor Marketing, I created a goal of creating 30 clubs. Well, that's almost impossible. It's not, but I mean, it's pretty difficult. And I knew it wouldn't be done, but I set the bar high so that I would have some place to reach. So my personal expectations, I usually set them high, as I said, but I'm always willing to review where I'm at, where I'm going, and know that I'm always doing my best to reach the goals that I want to find, that I will constantly strive for excellence rather than settle for mediocre. Madam Topics Master.
Thank you. That was an awesome answer. Hey. Tricia, I'm going to ask you a question. How do you respond? How do you give reverence to people who do not live up to your expectations?
I think the way that I revere people who don't live up to my expectations is to try and remember to be kind, that we all come from different places in our lives, and just because I have an expectation doesn't necessarily mean that you have to meet it. How can I help you get to that area? How can I get to get to that expectation? I need to hold your hand and help you along. If I'm expecting something of you, I should show you how to do it.
Thank you. Marty, you're the last one here that hasn't already spoken, so I'm going to go back and ask you the same question that I asked Doug. which is, in what ways have you exceeded the expectation of your teenage self? I know that might have been a while ago, but.
Yeah, it was a week or two.
Madam Topics Master and fellow Toastmasters.
Oh, Lori, I forgot. Sorry, I had Marty doing that. But go ahead,
I'm
Lori.
sorry, I didn't hear you correctly.
That's okay, Lori.
Go ahead, have Marty do it.
Okay, Marty.
Okay, fellow Toastmasters, when I was a teenager, my expectation was that I was going to be a music teacher. And I actually did meet that expectation. I taught band and orchestra in elementary and middle school for 10 years before I changed careers into project management. At the time, I thought that being a music teacher, I would do okay financially. Didn't realize that music teachers are generally kind of poor, and I found out after 10 years that I would be. And so I moved on to another career. And I think I've exceeded my expectations because I've been successful in business, in different levels of project management, in IT support. I've been able to create relations with people all over the world, which did not have that expectation I would be able to do that. And I have two wonderful children. I thought that I might be able to accomplish that, but I think I exceeded my expectation with them. They were both healthy, happy, and successful, and married. And so I've met expectations in that. And in my personal expectations, I was never very athletic. And now I stink at tennis, but I stink a lot less than I thought I would. And same thing, and I never thought I would play golf, but I play golf. And I stink, but I stink way less than I thought I would. So I think I've managed to exceed my expectations in a lot of areas, not in all of them, but in most of them, in a way that makes me feel satisfied, but not satisfied. I have more to accomplish. The journey's not over yet. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Lori, since I messed that up, I'm going to ask you. You can answer either one of these two questions. You can answer that question, which was, how have you exceeded your high school self? Or what are your expectations for yourself for the coming year?
Madam Topics Master and fellow Toastmasters. My expectations for the coming year. I have been up and down, plus or minus 50 pounds, many times in my life. Unfortunately, I'm on the up right now. However, something inspired me. Well, actually, I'm remembering what it was. Going to see my neurosurgeon and having him tell me about how bad my back is inspired me to take off those extra 50 pounds. And I made a commitment on February 1st to start swimming every day and join Weight Watchers. So I've been very, very successful so far. And the expectations of myself this coming year is to be 50 pounds lighter this year, by the end of the year. Quite an aggressive goal.
Thank you. That concludes our table topics for today. And I'd like to introduce our general evaluator today, which is Jim. Is that correct?
Nope.
Oh, no, Lori.
Mm-hmm.
Back to you.
Great. We have evaluations are my favorite part of the meeting. I consider evaluations the gem of Toastmasters, the hidden gem where we get to learn and grow. Our first evaluator is Doug, who will be evaluating Dawn's speech.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. Today, yes, I'll be evaluating Dawn, whose project was to be the host for the interview. So, of course, her objectives are to conduct a successful interview, also to understand the dynamics of the successful television interview or talk show, to prepare the questions to ask during the interview, and to present a positive, confident image on the television camera. I think Dawn accomplished these objectives very well. I think her introduction was very strong. She had great energy. She presented the background of our guest, Pamelah, clearly so that we understood who she was going to be talking to. And I think she presented that in a respectful way for Pamelah without necessarily being too reverent for the guest. So I think that was actually very well done. Her questions throughout the interview were good. They gave relevant facts to lead into the questions and gave good details so that the questions presented were relevant. One aspect I could challenge her on is practically her first question. She gave quite a bit of her own personal story in the hand analysis realm. And I was thinking that was starting to border on turning the focus of the interview to herself, as opposed to keeping it focused on her guest. So I would watch out for that. There's a line there that we don't want to cross as an interview host. One of the things I was also doing was watching Dawn as the host, her reactions or what she was doing while the guest was speaking, which meant I actually had to keep my focus on not Pamelah's window, but Dawn's. And I think that Dawn, as the host, did a very good job. She was watching attentively. She always had eye contact with the camera, which is great. And you could see her responding, nodding, doing some gestures silently while Pamelah was giving her responses. So it showed clearly that the host was paying attention and responding to what the guest had to say. One challenge I could give Dawn for the question period is that she took a very small role there, and a lot of the time the guest was actually calling upon who would ask the next question. And I think that it's incumbent upon the host to take that responsibility. So I would challenge Dawn to be the one to call upon who would ask the next question. But overall, it was a very well done interview. She hosted the interview clearly and professionally. So thank you. Back to you, Madam G.
Thank you, Doug. That was an excellent evaluation. Going over the objectives, I thought you had a good balance between reading your notes and looking at the audience. I like that Doug calls suggestions a challenge to challenge the speaker. One suggestion I have for Doug is that he's so expressive, sometimes he would wave arms really quick in front of his face, which was a little distracting, but overall he gave an excellent evaluation. Our next evaluator is Jim, who will be evaluating Pamelah's speech. Pam.
Thank you very much. Yes. Pam, thank you very much for your presentation and your question and answer and the ability for us to learn more about you. I itemized a couple of the things I wanted to share with you on a question-by-question basis. The first question that was given to you, I thought was answered a little too quickly. I don't want to say tersely is the proper answer, but you could tell by the question by the audience afterwards that you had an opportunity to use that one question to explain more in detail the pros and cons of what it's not voodoo witchcraft and what your role is. So my personal impression from the first question was there was a great pause between your final answering of it and then Dawn picking it back up, was to be more resolute when you're done, but also take the opportunity to spend a little more time on it. I think that I would have appreciated that. The second question, you used a comment like, which is always something that I hate my 18-year-old using, but I think you were, again, projecting a scenario in the past, and I could see that kind of as play acting. One thing I would suggest, in order to prepare for something like this in the future, I would do is a technique that you might know already called STAR, the STAR technique, S-T-A-R. Have you heard of that before? It's a situation, task, action, and result. It's great for interviews. It would be great for a venue like this where you premeditate some of the questions that you might have, but even if you don't, you can use this technique to lay out a situation, a task, and you can use some different words there, what you did and then what the result was. You can use that also with anecdotes and stories. And what I thought was missing in a lot of the potential answers is, like Darren LaCroix would tell you, is make a point, tell a story, make a point. And I think you could have added some additional stories or anecdotes to each one of the questions that you were asked. So I think I would capitalize on that. And then lastly, because of what I heard from the audience question by Doug, which was the skeptical question, I know you probably heard of the 6 thinking hats. It would not be a bad idea if you are going to prepare this for a real TV show to think of some of the ways different people might ask or receive your information from all the different types of thinking hats that there are out there, and maybe be prepared for the empathic and the critical, like Doug was, and the informative, and make sure you don't focus all of your answers in just one of those realms. So just some suggestions. If you're going to do this again, maybe we'll see you on TV someday to talk about this. That's my evaluation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Also, an excellent evaluation. I really liked seeing how our evaluators, both Doug and Jim, had substance in their suggestions for improvement to our speakers. And Jim, I particularly liked how you shared the STAR technique with us. One suggestion I have for Jim is to state the evaluation in the third person. When we speak just to the speaker, it's as if we're only speaking to the speaker and not the whole club. But if we say it in the third person, then it applies to everyone. So that'd be a small suggestion. Overall, great job, both of you. Thank you. I see that on the agenda, we usually ask for reports at this time, but I'm going to give my general evaluation first and then ask for reports. The meeting started on time. Dawn did an excellent job getting introductions completed right on time. Tricia, as our Toastmaster, read our club mission, and I like how she had a full introduction for both of the speakers. Marty and Rick explained their roles. That was fine. Andrea had some very interesting topics, and I like how she paid attention to people who didn't have a role today in terms of choosing speakers for the meeting. Francisco, our first topics speaker, talking about expectations for Toastmasters skills, had very good eye contact. One suggestion I have for Francisco, he was speaking to us, and as he talked about his ecstatic happiness, other than hearing the words, I didn't see any change in emotion. My suggestion is show being ecstatic when we say ecstatic. Exactly. Overall, great job, Francisco. Doug was our second topic speaker, talking about exceeding expectations of his teenage self. And when Doug speaks, he has a very warm, engaging smile. Jim, our next speaker, expectations for himself this year, made really good eye contact with the audience, though occasionally I found him looking down or up at the ceiling. As we stare at each other in our little Brady Bunch squares, it's very noticeable when we're speaking that we're looking down, other than if someone might be reading notes. But as a table topic speaker, there are no notes. So it's something to pay attention to. Our next speaker, Rick, how to manage not meeting personal expectations. Also, I noticed Rick was looking down, so something to pay attention to. Tricia, our next speaker, those who don't live up to your expectations. Tricia also has a warm, engaging smile. Look at her right now, even. I can feel her warmth in complete silence, just seeing her smile. And she makes great eye contact when she's speaking. A good example for all of us. Marty, our next speaker on expectations of his teenage self. Also, Marty has a warm, engaging smile. We can see it right now. While Marty was speaking, though, I also noticed that he was looking down or up at the ceiling, so just something to be aware of. Now I'd like to call upon our reports. First, our timer. Oh, I'm just noticing in the written agenda, it says Timmer. Timer is misspelled for these reports. Anyway, so Mr.
Oh,
Timmer,
yes, I
please
see.
give us your report.
My pleasure. For the speakers, Dawn was 5 to 7. She came in at 6 minutes and 33 seconds. And for speaker number 2, Pamela, it came in at 7 minutes and 11 seconds. For the table topics, excuse me, Francisco, 2 minutes, 2 seconds. Doug, 1 minute 40. Jim, 1 minute 43. Myself, where was I? Okay. Tricia, 37 seconds.
Rick,
Marty,
you were 125.
okay, thank you. Marty, 155. Lori, 103. And for the evaluations, Doug came in at 3:15 and Jim at 2 minutes and 44 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Timmer. And for our grammarian all-counter, Marty, please share your report.
Okay. First of all, I gain tremendous reverence for all of us and what we do in use of filler words, especially because I love to watch cable news. And I find people who are paid a lot of money to speak on cable news have an extensive use of filler words. Even people who work for the Washington Post, the New York Times. It's really quite amazing, but that's irrelevant. What is relevant is that there were a couple of ums. I'll give you a few people who, Tricia, you had 1, Doug, you had 2, Andrea, you had 1, Francisco, you had a couple of them, but really nothing major as far as filler words. Dawn, you did use the word so to connect sentences a couple of times. Maybe you watch on that. And as far as the use of the word reference, there was a lot. Actually, even in the chat box, I was looking at that. Francisco probably used that word 10 times just in the chat. And many people used it. I felt very humbled by that. Thank you. And it was hopefully a word you'll find use of in the future. As far as grammar, I enjoyed Jim's use of the word premeditate. Love that. And Andrea, your effective use of the third person was tremendous. There were really no big grammatical errors that I saw. If I'd listened really harder, I may have found 1 or 2, but the grammar we're all advanced Toastmasters, so we're all good at the English language, even those who use English as a second language. So congratulations, and back to you, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Marty. Great job. Overall, I thought we had an excellent meeting with 2 good speakers. It was very interesting how the 2 speakers had their speeches connected with one another, so I thought that went really well. Everyone was prepared for their roles and did a great job overall. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster. Tricia.
Thank you so much, Lori. Well, I believe that is the end of our meeting. We'll at this time turn it over to our presiding officer and future president, Dawn Nasura.
Thank you. I want to see what Francisco has going on here. He's popping something up, and I want to pin your video. Hold on.
It says kudos.
Kudos.
Kudos. Great.
Kudos, sorry.
Kudos.
Oh, super. Okay, yay. Awesome. I hope that everyone enjoyed the meeting. I enjoyed my portion doing this interview with Pamelah. I highly suggest doing this with each other. It's 2 projects within the Communicating on Video Advanced Manual. If anybody is interested in doing that, I'd be happy to do more interviews. I think this is fun, even though I've done that project before, but we could do it together. And with that, Did anyone have any final thoughts? Francisco, you are visiting us for the first time, or maybe you've been here before, but can you not been here before? Okay, could you share your overall thoughts, or what did you think about our meeting?
Again, exceeded expectations. I meant it. You guys are ending on time, which is great for a lunch format, above and beyond. And I'll be seeing you later, and I'll talk about the transcript because I want to analyze what you did. I'm about to give that speech. Definitely a great recommendation, and thank you for having me.
Great, thanks. I'm so glad that you could participate and join us today, and we hope to see you again. And at this point, I'm going to, I'm looking for hands. I'm actually going to put us all on gallery view so I can see everyone. Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to say about the meeting? Laura, you did a great job. I love having you as a general evaluator. And Andrea, I don't know how you do that, but your table topics are always right out of the ballpark. I just feel like you're a player, table topics player. So you do really well. Any other comments before I get into the agenda for next week? Thoughts, comments? No.
I thought we had a really good meeting. I really found the interview today to be quite interesting to watch and very informative. Thank you, Pamelah and Don.
Welcome.
Yeah, that was great. And thanks, yeah. Raising the roof here. Okay, so I'm going to officially adjourn the meeting early. We're 7 minutes early. I'm going to adjourn. My gavel is going down, and I'm going to stop the recording and go do the screen share. So thank you very much, everyone.